Inilah Television Brunei. Sebentar lagi akan disiarkan berita dalam bahasa Inggeris yang akan disampaikan oleh Azhar Zainah Haji Muhammad Saleh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Good evening. Her Majesty and other leading female members of the royal household have attended a ceremony marking the completion of Quranic studies by His Majesty's eldest daughter. The international headlines: Palestinian fighters have hijacked an Italian cruise ship in the Mediterranean. Sabah's Attorney General has pleaded not guilty to charges of corruption, and fresh fighting has broken out for control of Palestinian refugee camps in Beirut. National news first. A ceremony was held today at Istana Nurul Iman to mark the successful completion of Quranic studies by His Majesty's eldest daughter, Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Sri Pangeran Anak Putri Rashidah Datul Bolkiah. The function was held in the throne room in the presence of Her Majesty the Raja Isteri Pangeran Anak Salehah. Also there was Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Pangeran Isteri Hajah Mariam. Other leading female members of the royal household present were Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Masna, Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Hajah Nur Ain, Yang Amat Mulia Pangeran Bini Rohaiza, Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Amal Umi Kalsum Al-Islam, Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Amal Rakyah, and Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Amal Nasibah. The Khatam al-Quran ceremony began with the reading of the Al-Fatiha by Yang Mulia Dayang Malihah binti Sanib, the Princess Quran reading teacher. Yang Teramat Mulia Paduka Seri Pangeran Anak Putri Rashidah Datul Bolkiah then read a verse from the Quran as cannons boomed out a 17-gun salute. A group of women religious officials and teachers then recited further religious verses, and this was followed by a special Thanksgiving prayer for such occasions read by the princess herself. The Thanksgiving prayer was read by Yang Mulia Datin Hajah Kamaliyah Suhaimi. Wives of state dignitaries, senior government officials and foreign diplomats were also at the ceremony. A delegation of 7 members of Jakarta's Regional Legislative Council is now in the country for a 4-day visit. The visitors, led by Awang Shamsuddin Panalaim, are guests of the Municipal Board. This morning, the Indonesians heard a briefing on the functions and the administration of the board given by its chairman, Awang Haji Yaakob bin Haji Ahmad. The briefing was at the conference room of the government rest house in the capital. The Indonesians were then taken for a tour of the multi-story car park, the market and the tamu in the capital. The aim of the visit is to foster closer relationship between the two countries.
Undang-undang lembaga diwujudkan oleh Presiden karena masa itu perundingan barangkali, dan mudah-mudahan juga diadakan pada tahun pula diadakan jabatan.
Officials from the Brunei Mora District Office will on Thursday go to several mukims in the district to judge the best kampong as part of the activities marking the nationwide cleanliness campaign. The areas to be visited are Mukim Kilanas, Sengkurong, Pangkalan Batu and Kampong Lumapas. The Bandar Sri Begawan Magistrates Court today fined a 28-year-old man for a drug offence. Siwi Kok was fined $600 for possessing drug. He paid the fine. Half of the road at Mile 4, Jalan Muara, will be closed to traffic for 10 days starting tomorrow. It is to allow for excavation work to be done at the area. Motorists are advised to use the other half, which will handle two-lane traffic during the closure. 178 outstanding students from primary schools in the Brunei Mora district have received their Shell Merit Prizes. Today's presentation ceremony at the Kampong Mata-Mata Government Primary School began with a welcoming speech from the senior supervisor of schools in the Brunei Mora district, Awang Haji Abdul Samad bin Kahar. It was followed by the chief guest, Awang Zana Abidin bin Haji Muhammad Ali, a representative from Brunei Shell. The recipients are 108 students from government schools and 70 from mission schools. Best students from the Guidance and Training Center at Pulai also received their prizes. World news. Palestinians holding a hijacked Italian cruise liner today threatened to kill British and American passengers unless West European governments pressured Israel to free jailed compatriots. Egyptian officials said the commandos armed with explosives made the threat by radio early today. The luxury liner Achille Loro was seized off Alexandria yesterday. There was still confusion today over exactly how many passengers and crew on board, but an Egyptian official said it has about 440 passengers and crew on board. A report said most of the passengers were known to have left the vessel at Alexandria for a land tour of Egypt, intending to re-embark at portside. It was not known how many British and American are on board. A United States Embassy spokesman said latest reports indicated the liner was at anchor 30 miles northeast of portside. The Palestinians earlier demanded the release of 50 Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. The commandos claim that they belong to a small group called the Palestine Liberation Front, but the Palestine Liberation Organization has denied any role in the operation. The number of commandos on board are believed to be between 6 and 12. Sabah's Attorney General Datuk Herman Luping today pleaded not guilty to 4 charges of corruption and 1 criminal charge in a court in Kota Kinabalu. Datuk Luping is alleged to have corruptly received more than $1 million in April and May to use his influence to protect timber concessions owned by Victor Wong Chet Singh. The charges allege that Datuk Luping solicited most of the money from Wong for the Parti Bersatu Sabah PBS, which took over the state government after elections in April. The criminal received money to use his influence to stop a timber license being terminated. Datuk Luping was appointed by PBS as Attorney General in July. Fresh fighting has broken out for control of Palestinian refugee camps south of Beirut. At least 3 people were killed and more than 20 others wounded in clashes between Shiite militiamen and Palestinian fighters at Sabra, Shatila and Bouj al-Barajne. It was the 3rd outbreak of fighting at the battered camps in 5 months. More than 600 people died in bloody fighting around the camps in June and last month. Shiite militiamen have been battling for control of 3 camps to prevent the Palestinians from again becoming a military force in the Lebanese capital. As the fighting erupted, Syrian peacekeeping forces have consolidated their positions in the northern port city of Tripoli to enforce a ceasefire agreement between warring Muslim militias.
Obeying the ceasefire agreement, the Tawhid militia continued to move their heavy weapons out of Tripoli. For 3 weeks, this armory of rocket launchers and anti-aircraft cannon was used in their battle with the pro-Syrian militia. Both sides wanted control of the northern port, and both forces lost control when the Syrian army moved in. The ceasefire called for all weapons to be surrendered or removed from the port. As the operation continued, Syrian troops armed to the teeth supervised. They're keeping the all-too-tense peace at the moment and they have no intention of losing control. In the faction fighting, more than 200 people were killed and well over 1,000 wounded. In this conflict, like every war, it's the innocent civilians who have suffered most. In Tripoli, more than 500,000 people were forced to flee the shells and rockets. It's now quiet in the northern port, and one by one, families are moving back to their city. For some, it will mean starting again, their homes destroyed by the shelling.
British police have been ordered to use rubber bullets and tear gas to contain civil violence which has erupted on the streets of mainland Britain. And for the first time in recent chain of riots, police were shot at and one police officer was hacked to death by a mob of youths during a night of disorders in Tottenham on Sunday. It was the fourth in a series of riots in poor, mainly black areas of British cities in a space of a month.
By 2 o'clock this morning, most of the rioters had melted away into the night. The few still roaming the streets were arrested. But police still feared the presence of armed gangs holed up in the estate, and with one officer already killed, it was decided to play a waiting game. At 4:30, the police moved in force. 500 officers took just 5 minutes to sweep through the estate. A fragile peace had finally returned to the streets of Tottenham.
By daybreak, a state of shock had settled on the Broadwater Farm estate. Cleared up the debris of the night, neighbours looked on in disbelief. Others picked their way through the relics of burnt-out cars, setting off for work in the morning rain. Just behind this block of flats, police had begun the investigation into the murder of P.C. Blakelock. If things didn't change, there would be more trouble like last night.
The French Navy has warned the anti-nuclear protest ship Greenpeace to stay outside a 12-mile territorial zone around France's nuclear test site in the South Pacific. A written message saying the area was temporarily closed to unauthorized shipping has been handed over to Greenpeace captain. The warning came as 3 vessels taking part in a Greenpeace protest of French nuclear testing at Mororoa Atoll gathered near the test site. The vessels were in a virtual standoff with 5 French warships just outside France's 12-mile territorial limit. President Mitterrand has ordered the military to use force, if necessary, to keep unauthorized ships out of the restricted zone. A state of emergency has been declared in Puerto Rico as the country faces its worst flood in history. At least 50 people have so far died in the floodings. Civil defense officials warned that the death toll could eventually reach 200. 3 days of continuous rain has left at least 11 of the island's 78 towns and municipalities inundated and cut off. Meanwhile, Typhoon Brenda has left about 60 people dead or missing when it hit the southern part of the Korean peninsula. Most of the casualties were fishermen who were drowned when their boats capsized. Others were victims of road accidents, swept away by high seas, drowned in swollen rivers or caught in landslides. Damage is estimated at millions of dollars. Brenda is said to be moving towards the Sea of Japan after unleashing heavy rains and strong winds on the southern areas of Korea and Japan. The United Nations Security Council has unanimously condemned South Africa for its attack on Angola. The 15-nation council adopted a resolution that strongly condemned Pretoria for its latest premeditated and unprovoked aggression against Angola. It demanded South Africa to withdraw unconditionally all its military forces occupying Angolan territory. The South African attack was said to have taken place last month, in which it was reported that 6 Angolan helicopters were shot down. Reports say fighting between government troops and rebels in Uganda is causing food shortages in Kampala. The report said brutalities have also taken place in the Loero district north of the Ugandan capital. The report added guerrillas of the National Resistance Army had cut off a number of roads and were interfering with the economies of Rwanda, Burundi and Zaire. The 3 landlocked nations have been relying heavily on goods imported by road through Uganda. A fire which broke out on the North Sea oil rig yesterday has been extinguished, but 1 worker is still reported missing. The man was the only person unaccounted for after an explosion ripped through the platform, sending flames shooting into the air and setting the sea on fire. 79 other workers took to lifeboats. Most had time to board lifeboats, but 2 had to jump into the sea. The incident occurred when a gas pocket was hit soon after exploratory drilling began. Rescuers said the sea around the rig blazed most of the night before all gas in the pocket emptied. At least 8 people have died in a bloody pileup on a busy highway in California. The pileup involved 39 vehicles. It occurred on a key interstate highway in Sacramento, where visibility was blocked by thick smoke from a nearby grass fire. 4 women died in a car smashed between 2 tractor-trailer rigs. 4 other people were incinerated in cars that caught fire. The spectacular crash spewed twisted and charred wreckage across the heavily traveled highway. The dead were left entangled in the wreckage until survivors could be extracted. The crashes, which left 45 other people injured, were blamed on dense smoke from the grass fire that reduced visibility to nearly zero. Sports, soccer, and Real Madrid have leapt to the top of the Spanish First Division after their 2-1 win over Atletico Madrid. Real Madrid's first goal came in the 9th minute before Atletico equalized 5 minutes later.
Michel cae, rechaza, pató el Atlético. Quique lanza una falta, Ruiz, espléndido remate y gol.
Real Madrid control of the game paid off in the 83rd minute through its striker Emilio.
El pase butragueño que hizo poco, pero lo que hizo ha servido como prólogo a un gol y a 2 puntos. El trayazo de Santillana.
Here is the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. Cloud clusters can be seen in the satellite picture received this afternoon, scattered over a wide area, including showery clouds to the west of the state. On the second picture, only a small amount of clouds is covering the state. Clouds to the east or southeast may spread westwards very late tonight, affecting 1 or 2 areas. Most areas will be fine and dry during the early parts of tonight. Outbreaks of rain or thunderstorms may affect a few areas very late tonight. Outbreaks of rain may possibly occur in some areas near the coasts early tomorrow morning. Thereafter, fine. Tomorrow afternoon will be fine and sunny, but thunderstorms may affect areas in Temburong late in the afternoon. Wallahu a'lam. That's all in tonight's English news. Good night.